Hello everyone, my name is Greg Christensen. I'm the Technical Director for Triathlon BC. In this presentation, I'll be covering some of the changes to the triathlon competition rules in 2025. The primary audience for this video is race directors, technical officials, and coaches. However, some athletes will also find value in some of the notes. The source of the material for this presentation is the 2025 World Triathlon Competition Rules. You can find those by going to the triathlon.org website, clicking on search, and searching for competition rules. We also have a link directly on our Triathlon BC website under officiating and rules. We won't review every change that has happened this year. The updates I'll present will be a combination of minor clarifications as well as some more fulsome changes. We'll go through the competition rules by section, but only hit on the items that I think will have specific application in our community age group events. Jumping right in, section 2 under general conduct. This is a clarification rather than a real change. Clarification that athletes will not be penalized by the officials for unintentional littering. That is, garbage falling out of their pocket or falling off their bike. They will be penalized if they are seen intentionally littering around the race course. Under eligibility, there have been some more significant changes to the age group competition categories. Whereas we used to have M and F for male and female, that has now been renamed to N for open and F for female. Those who are identified as female at birth may enter into the female category. All others, including females if they wish, can enter in the open category. It will be important to follow these categories, especially for events that act as World Championship qualifiers. Events that have already been set up in the registration systems as male and female may be difficult to change at this point, so those events can continue using the previous male-female categories. However, new registration setups should follow the new designations. Staying under 2.5 eligibility, section M, this is not a change, but more as a reminder to race directors that the 24-hour rule has been in effect for several years now. As of 2024, Triathlon BC no longer accepts physician exemption waivers as an exclusion from this rule. So for the few races that may fall under the rule, it's important to consider the start times for each event. Switching over to uniforms, while Triathlon BC does not enforce any kind of restrictions on age group athletes, we now allow sleeved uniforms for all categories. That includes elite, junior, and para athletes as well. The only restriction here is that the sleeves must not extend below the elbow. For zippers, if athletes are wearing uniforms with front zippers, they can be undone during the race as long as it is connected at the bottom. That is, not flapping in the breeze behind you. And they must continue to cover your shoulders. It should be fully zipped heading into the finish line in the last 100 meters. Along with the changes to the male-female categories, that now also extends, of course, to the way that categories are identified on the body marking. So N25 would appear on an athlete that is in the 25 to 29 category for those in the open category, or F25 for those in the female category. The competition rules have now provided a guide for where body marking should be applied. So for age groupers, on the upper body, it should be on the lower arm to accommodate those longer sleeves that are available. And on the back of the right calf for the age group category. It's not required to put the numbers on the legs. It is an optional, but is not required. Switching over to penalties. The penalty minutes have now changed. So for drafting infringements, they have now been reduced. Where the long distance penalties were 5 minutes, they are now 3. Middle distance, they've moved from also 5 down to 2. Standard distance from 2 minutes to 1. And for sprint and shorter events, they have been reduced from 1 minute down to 30 seconds. For other infringements, they have stayed the same, with the exception of super sprint distance, which has gone from 10 seconds down to a 5-second penalty. Switching over to swimming. Section 4.1, this is a clarification of an existing rule. With pool swims, it's still acceptable to push off of the wall. However, in open water swims, it has clarified that it is forbidden to pull or push off of any inanimate object in any way that is going to help the athlete's progress. This would be off of boats or paddle boards or kayaks or that sort of thing. In section 4.3, we have the maximum stay in the water. These time restrictions are intended to avoid having exhausted swimmers continuing onto the bike and run courses. There has been some clarification or adjustments in the 750 to 1500 meter category, and whereas it used to be a single overarching time period for that entire distance, it has now been broken down into smaller increments. Swim caps. Previously, neoprene caps could be worn if they were allowed by the technical delegate. If wetsuits are allowed, then neoprene caps may be worn. They do not need to ask for an exception. However, that cap must be worn underneath the cap provided by the race. For swim skins, this is a significant change in that they can now be worn anytime, regardless of wetsuit use, but they must be removed after the swim. Previously, for standard and sprint distance events, if it was not a wetsuit legal swim, then they had to wear the swim skin for the entirety of the event. They could remove them in middle distance and longer. Now, regardless of distance, the swim skin must be removed after the swim. Moving on to the bike. Drafting. The drafting zone has now been standardized to 12 meters, regardless of the length of the event. Previously, sprint and standard events had a 10-meter drafting zone. Middle distance and longer had a 12-meter drafting zone. It is now being standardized across all distances with one drafting zone. Transition. Wetsuits can only be removed in a designated area or in the transition spot. This is intended to have athletes not stop between the water and the transition area and take their wetsuits off. It can potentially interfere with other athletes' progress, and we don't want them stopping right at the water's edge to take their wetsuits off. If the race provides wetsuit strippers or a specific area for wetsuit removal, that's fine. Then this should be off to the side to avoid interfering with other athletes leaving the water. Jumping right down to team relay events. The order of competition for mixed team relay. This changes every 4 years with the Olympic cycle to provide more fairness in the competition. Previously, for the last 4 years, the order of competition was man, woman, man, woman. That has now changed to woman, man, woman, man. Or in the case of age group events, the order is woman, open categories. Also with mixed relay, they have now made some adjustments to make it far easier to create a mixed relay team. Previously, everyone, all 4 members of the team needed to be within the same age category. Now they have opened that up where athletes can be any age, any combination of ages. The category that you enter into will be the sum total of your athletes' ages. So for example, if athlete 1 is 20 years old, athlete 2 is 30, 3 is 40, and 4 is 50, the sum total of their ages is 140. That would put them into the X120 age group category. I think this is going to make a big difference in the ability for people to create teams and have some more fun in this great format of race. So this has been a very brief overview of some of the more notable changes that will affect age group events. There are many other changes, and I do encourage you to review the latest rules to understand them more fully. As I mentioned at the beginning, a link to these rules can be found on the Triathlon BC website. If you have any questions about these or any other rules, please feel free to reach out to me at officials@tribc.org. Thank you, and I'll see you at the races.